What's up, y'all? Hello and welcome back to the channel, or if it is your first time here, welcome especially. My name's Sally and it means a lot that you have stopped by. I am inviting you into my kitchen this week for a week of metabolically supportive, we'll say, nourishing meals. That doesn't mean anything crazy. It just means that we're focusing on nutrient dense, easy to absorb, digestible foods. And I really want to emphasize that most of what I eat is incredibly simple. It takes less than 30 minutes to throw together, but then over the course of the week, I do like to mix it up a couple times with some more involved meals for the sake of keeping things fresh, keeping things fun, and just trying new things. But starting off on Monday, I am making some Korean lettuce cups. I just thought this sounded really tasty and like a fun and different way to use up some of my ground beef. So I started by browning 2 pounds of ground beef, and we're able to get a really good deal at a store around here for, it's like 93.7 100% grass-fed, grass-finished ground beef. And so we eat that honestly lately, like most nights of the week, but try to mix in other cuts that are more gelatinous, because you want to make sure you're not just eating the muscle meats. We'll mix in, chicken or pork or something once or twice as well. But anyways, I'm now making a sauce to go on the beef. It has a 1/2 cup. You can use soy sauce, tamari, or coconut aminos, whatever you like. A 1/4 cup of whatever type of sugar you prefer, like 2 cloves of minced garlic. It has a 1/2 teaspoon to 1 teaspoon of fish sauce, juice of 1 lime, 2 tablespoons of sriracha, and I'm just pouring that over the beef. We're going to cook that down until it gets nice and caramelized and all of the liquid kind of cooks out of it. Then I am rinsing off some pieces of romaine lettuce. I just got a big bag from Costco this week, so I used it in several meals throughout the week. And then I had these peanuts that were just hanging out in my pantry, and I thought they would be good to use as well. So I chopped some of them up. They were just like salted, dry roasted peanuts, and filled the lettuce with the beef mixture, packed it in a to-go container because we were gonna be going to a friend's house that night and needed to eat between things. But I just topped it with some of those peanuts. This was super delicious. I would usually have some more carbohydrates with this, but at our friend's house we were gonna have some homemade ice cream, and so I just figured I'd eat this and then have my carbs in the form of that ice cream a little bit later. So delicious dinner on day 1. Day number 2, and I am making one of my favorite beef stews. I'm sorry, the lighting on this day is a little bit icky. It got to be way too late. We were waiting on a package and we ended up getting to the gym later than intended, and then it was like 10 o'clock before we ate dinner, which is not ideal, but you know what, we just roll with it. So I had some beef here that I had pre-cut and salted. I don't buy stew beef because it is so darn expensive. I'll just get an affordable grass-fed roast. I'll cut it up, and then when I cut it up, I just went ahead and salted it and popped it in the fridge. And then now that I'm ready to make my stew, I browned that beef in a little bit of avocado oil, and then I had to do it in batches, but I removed it from the pan. I chopped up an onion, chopped up a bunch of different veggies. You'll see here in a minute. I chopped up an onion, and that goes into the pan next. Also, this video will come out before it. Next week, you will see that there is a what I eat in a day where we're featuring the same meal. Was filming 2 videos at once this week, and so you'll see my husband popping in a minute with his fancy camera. He was very kind as to film a what I eat in a day for me. So if you see this again next week and you have deja vu, that's what's going on. But it would only be this meal. Anyway, I'm throwing my onions into my Dutch oven to continue sauteing. Once those kind of soften and brown a little bit, I'm going to add my other veggies. This is the simplest beef stew. I have the full recipe, an acorn squash version specifically, but you can kind of mix and match whatever vegetables you want. The full recipe is in Basics, my PRO-METABOLIC starter guide. That is your step-by-step guide to how to really support a healthy metabolism through the 3 tenets that I've identified being blood sugar regulation, inflammation management, and how to meet your nutrient needs through food and targeted supplementation. And it has over 20 recipes in it and a week-long meal plan. And anyways, all that goes to say that one of my favorite recipes in there is going to be my beef stew recipe. But today I'm making it with carrots, with potatoes, and I put my garlic in there a minute ago. Garlic, makes everything better, but I like to put that in after my onions so it doesn't burn and stick to the bottom of the pan. I mix mix up all my veggies, and then I add some pepper, some salt. We're going to throw the stew beef back in here in a minute, and then you're going to cover it with broth. In an ideal world, I would have my own bone broth available, but I didn't have any of that this week, and so I used some chicken stock. Yes, I use chicken stock in beef stew. I know that sounds weird. It's always like beef broth for beef stew, chicken broth for chicken soup, but beef broth has a stronger taste, so maybe that is more noticeable in chicken soup, but like, I don't know. I just use them interchangeably. Does anybody else do that? Or is that really weird? I don't know. Okay. So I let that simmer for about probably 20 to 30 minutes until everything was nice and tender. And then I served it up. Yeah, super late, but a super tasty, delicious dinner. Always one of my favorites. And again, use that hack. Just buy an affordable roast, chop it up. Don't buy stew beef if it's more expensive. And I don't know why. For some reason, it's always more expensive. Okay, next day. This is like a variation on a go-to meal for me. One way to make ground beef feel more exciting is just to make burgers out of it. And so I had 2 pounds of that same grass-fed, grass-finished ground beef. I cut it into 4 pieces, so each burger was going to be a 1/4 pound, and I just smushed it down, shaped it into burgers. I have this seasoned salt from this spice shop called Penzeys back where I'm from in North Carolina, and off the top of my head, I can't remember what's all in it. It's all clean ingredients, but can't remember what they are off the top of my head, but it tastes really nice. It kind of reminds me of like the stuff at Red Robin, if you've ever had like the Red Robin seasoned salt. Anyways, I just sprinkled both sides of my burger patties with that. I then set those to the side and started to work on a dressing. I minced up about 2 cloves of garlic and just added those to a mason jar. And I had some lemon juice left over in the fridge from a few days ago, so I added that in as well. It was about a 1/4 cup of lemon juice with 2 cloves of garlic. Then we did about a 1/2 cup of olive oil, which took forever to come out. Added that on top of the lemon juice. And then I think I did 2 teaspoons, or maybe, I'm trying to think, that's a 1/2 teaspoon. So I did 1 teaspoon with those ratios of Dijon mustard, added some salt, added lots of fresh cracked black pepper, and I gave that a good shake. This is an incredibly simple, incredibly delicious dressing. Only recently did I start using lemon juice in dressings. I would always use vinegar, and I still sometimes do use vinegar, but honestly, lemon juice is so good in a vinaigrette, which is not a vinaigrette, a lemongrette. No, I don't know. A dressing like that. So I had more romaine, just chopped that up, threw that into a colander to be rinsed, washed, whatever you want to say. Used my filtered water to rinse that, and then I just set it to the side to be revisited when it was time to serve things up. Okay, now I am throwing my burger patties into a cast iron skillet. I can usually fit about 3 at a time, and I just cook these on either side until they're done. You can use a thermometer, but with beef, it's not that big of a deal. So, yeah, just cook them till they are where I want them to be. And then on this night, I served it over some rice with that lettuce and just the dressing, the simplest salad of all time, but it's super refreshing and just adds so much flavor and texture to the meal. And so I really enjoyed doing that. Again, like I said, burger patties, there's so many different things you can do with them, so many flavors. Of course, you could do them on a bun, on a sourdough bun, like actually turn it into a sandwich if you want, but even just putting it on rice, it feels fancier for some reason than just ground beef and rice. So this next day was Friday. I actually skipped Thursday, and then I'm doing Friday and Saturday for this video because I don't even remember what happened on Thursday, but it was a little bit chaotic. My husband and I have started hosting this group of young married couples at our house a couple Friday nights a week, and we've been trying out different, more involved recipes for that to share with our friends, and it's been really fun. So on this day, we made together beef birria, I think that's how you say it. I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong, but Samuel was very studious over there looking at the recipe and cutting up all of the peppers, which we didn't consider. He should have worn gloves because they were super spicy and burnt him a little bit, but that's okay. They weren't that spicy, but it's like sometimes peppers that aren't that spicy, they still have a lot of like, I guess the capsaicin still somehow can like hurt your skin. So and certainly your eyes. Anyways, that's tangential. As he was preparing those peppers, I was preparing the beef. This is just more chuck roast. I cut that into pieces, threw it in a bowl, and salted it. And then in this pot, we have boiling some onions, some tomatoes. We added all of the chilies. There were guajillo chilies de arbol, and then there was ancho chilies as well. There were ancho chilies. Added some peppercorns, and this just simmers for like 15 minutes until everything's soft. Threw some bay leaves in there as well. I'm going to link the full recipe that we followed. It turned out amazingly, but don't listen to me. Go look at that recipe. This was my first time really making like a full-on authentic Mexican dish, and it turned out really well. It was so good. And it was, like I said, it was really fun to make that together with Samuel. But once everything had softened, I added it to the food processor. Added it to the food processor, and we had to work in batches, but we just pureed that as finely as we could. We didn't need to strain it. We added like half a cup of broth and a teaspoon of apple cider vinegar each time we put a batch into the food processor. We didn't need to strain it because the food processor was able to blend it up thoroughly enough. And then we added it to a bowl, just kept it set to the side because we were going to use that pot to sear the meat, which is why I cut it into those chunks so that it would cook a little bit faster and so that we could sear different chunks individually. I guess that doesn't make any difference in terms of time. It's easier to sear it in one big piece. However, it cooked a little bit faster, I think, cutting it into chunks. So now I added the spices that were pre-ground. We did cinnamon, we did oregano, coriander, also cloves, which I had to grind up myself. The recipe itself uses mostly whole spices, and then there are just a few ground spices. I tried to use what I already had, and so I kind of had some ground that they wanted whole and vice versa. That's why I'd say listen to the recipe, don't listen to me. But even making those substitutions, it was very, very delicious. As I said, Samuel was searing the beef for us, and then once everything was seared, we put it back into the Dutch oven, and then we poured the sauce on top, managed to splatter it all over the wall and all over the stove, but that's okay. It came off, and eventually we'll redo this kitchen anyway. But yeah, you stir that into the beef or up with the beef. You add a little bit more broth, and then that goes into the oven to braise. It took about 2.5 to 3 hours. Just depends probably on how much surface area the meat has, how much meat you have going on. And to go with it, we made some homemade sourdough tortillas. I shared these in another video recently, which I can link below. So I didn't go through the full process here with you, but this is a really fantastic recipe. We don't have a tortilla press, so it's always hard to get them perfectly tortilla shaped, but they taste phenomenal. And we just ended up serving them on our plates and like piling some meat onto each one, like kind of fajita style, I guess. I don't know. And then topping it, traditionally the recipe said you would top this with white onions and cilantro and lime juice, and so that's what we did. But anyway, I love that tortilla recipe. We use lard, and I ferment them for like 24 hours, which is awesome. So that was the setup before the meat. The meat you'll see here in a second was still on the stove. We had, again, people coming over, so I had to get a clip before it was completely done, but we just ended up shredding that meat. It shredded really easily, and I will 100% be making this again. It was incredibly delicious. Okay, and last day of the video, I started off by making some focaccia. This is the, I think you say linguarian focaccia, from Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat. It's actually not in the cookbook. It is on the blog. This is my favorite focaccia recipe of all time. It is not a sourdough recipe, but it's the best that I've had, and sometimes I just make it because it is phenomenal, and that's okay. That's what you do. I will link that recipe below, but it's really fun. You get to stretch out the dough. There's lots of olive oil and lots of salt involved. You dimple the dough, and then you make a brine. It's just, I want to say it's like a couple teaspoons of kosher salt and water that you dissolve. You dissolve the kosher salt, not the water. You dissolve it in the water. I've been sitting here editing for a long time, if you can't tell by the struggle that I'm having recording this voiceover. But Anyway, you pour the brine over the dough once you have dimpled it, and then you let it rise for, it usually takes about 45 minutes. While that was in the oven, I didn't show you putting it into the oven, but it rose, I put it into the oven, and then I had some chicken that I had pre-marinated. I learned this tip from Sarah Therese, but if you buy chicken or any kind of meat in bulk and you're gonna freeze it, just divide it up and go ahead and throw a marinade in some of the bags, and then as it thaws, it will marinate the meat, and it's ready to cook. It is ready to just throw into whatever. So I thawed the meat, I cut it into little strips, and then I used all of the resources at my disposal. We have this little griddler thing that we were gifted, and then 2 cast iron skillets, and I just needed to get it done. I don't know if I said this already or not, but we were taking this dinner over to a friend's house, so we made a ton, but we threw it all onto the griddler, onto those cast iron skillets, just cooked it until it was done. 165 Fahrenheit for chicken. And then while the chicken was cooking, I was working on a super simple salad. Again, more of this romaine. That's kind of the theme throughout the week. And I guess just a tip that I would share with you guys is like, don't feel a need to get 50 different things over the course of the week. Yes, we want to eat, different foods. We don't want to eat the same thing all the time, but you can eat the same produce in a given week so that you're not buying 50 different things, and to save a little bit of money. It just works really well. But I chopped up that romaine really finely. It's not pictured or videoed, but I also chopped up a couple shallots, and tossed those on top as well. I had to stop to pull the focaccia out of the oven. Once you pull it out, you give it one final drizzle of high quality olive oil, and then you sprinkle some flaky sea salt on top. I usually just use kosher because that's the flaky sea salt I tend to have on hand. But if you have, something fancier, you can certainly use that as well. Okay, so focaccia is ready to go. Chicken, we are just flipping over. The salad is pretty much all set, and then I utilized the same dressing that I made the other night. I just topped it off, but the stuff with the lemon juice, olive oil, pepper, garlic, Dijon. We took this all over to a friend's house and had a wonderful night together. So that's it. Thanks so much for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe. Until next time. Bye, y'all.